ב9:30 בבוקר כוחות הפינוי הולמים בדלת של משפחת כהן. רוב בני הבית בשעה הזו נושאים תפילה. חודשים ארוכים הם ציפו לנס של הרגע האחרון, להתערבות אלוהית ממש ברגע הזה שתמנע את הפינוי. אבל הדקות חולפות, ונראה שהתפילות לא נענות. והיא יודעת שזו הפעם האחרונה שהיא רואה את הבית שבמו ידיה בנתה לפני 20 שנה. הבית שבו גדלו כל ילדיה. שמונה חיילים, לא פחות, צריכים לגרור את הבן שהתגייס בקרוב ליחידה מובחרת. את הדחיפה האחרונה לאוטובוס נותן דווקא אבא. ובפנים
אתה יכול לקחת לי מדבר. כי אתה כבר עשית את זה. לא, דחוף. אתה ישר לי בסך הכל גוף. לא שווה כלום. זה דחוף, אני שואל. בוא, בא איתי. אני ואתה לבד. בוא איתי.
3.5 שעות אחרי הדפיקה הראשונה בדלת עזב את הבית האחרון מבני משפחת כהן. אחרי 21 שנה הם יתחילו מחדש, לא ברור עדיין היכן. הורים, המשפחה כרגע בירושלים. רב סרן משה, כמה דקות אחרי התמונות האלה, עבר לפנות את המשפחה הבאה.
is Aניטה Tucker. I'm originally from New York City, from Brooklyn. My husband's from Cleveland, Ohio. We came in Aliyah in 1969 as a young couple, and we lived in Beersheba for 7 years. And then we decided we needed a new challenge for our children, and we were sent by the government of Israel to an area that was going to be built up called Gush Katif in the Gaza Strip. And there I lived for 29 years. I had children that were born there, grandchildren that were born there, and I really hoped that I would have great-grandchildren that would be born there. I still do. I was a farmer. I grew many different types of vegetables and flowers. The last years I was a celery grower. And I'm looking forward to being able to work again. The last moments in Netzach Khazani were the most difficult of all the time of the struggle to try to keep a home. We were having an ethical struggle that we thought everyone would join the bandwagon for it, because certainly it's not ethical to take close to 10,000 people out of their home when you know the terror is going to be destroyed and nothing is prepared for them as an alternative. And in my own home, I packed nothing because I felt like I had to give God a little extra time to perhaps change his mind. I packed nothing in my home. And 15 soldiers marched to the Tucker family house, 15 Air Force officers wearing the famous symbols that were prepared by psychologists to try to help us leave more quickly and identify with the symbols, the flag of Israel, the blue and white that we know are the symbols of Judaism, the menorah, the candelabra that is the symbol of the Holy Temple, the symbol of the Knesset of Israel. And with those symbols, they marched 15 soldiers to our home and had to sit around our dining room table and listen to us talk. I told them how we came to live in Israel, because it's the homeland of the Jewish people, because I didn't want to be a refugee as my parents and my grandparents had been, and that the cursed land that the Arabs around us, our neighbors, our acquaintances, had told us this is the cursed land, and the last people that ever grown anything here were Abraham and Isaac. And this cursed land turned into a bountiful land. We were very successful in agriculture. Our produce reached all over Europe, in the States, and told them and talked and talked and talked and talked, and nothing helped. After 2 hours of talking, not a tear fell from the eyes of the soldiers, not a muscle moved on their faces. They were like robots with a glass wall in front of them. And except for the highest officer, who every once in a while would look at his watch and say, Mrs. Tucker, at 12:00, you're going to have to leave your house, you're going to have to leave your home, you're going to have to leave your town forever. After that, I don't know what happened to me. I'm not a crybaby. I don't cry very easily, but I began screaming like a real nut. I guess I hoped I would bring some emotion out of these soldiers. I started screaming, my dear state of Israel, my dear state of Israel, my dear state of Israel, please, please, dear soldiers, give me a little hint, a little crumb, a little something that you understand that it's unethical to take 10,000 people out of their home when you know the terror is going to continue. I want so much that my children will continue believing, and my grandchildren will continue believing in the state of Israel, that it's the beginning of the redemption of the Jewish people, for the flourishing of the Jewish people. And I said to the soldiers, please, I want so much that your children will continue believing in the state of Israel. Give me a hint, a little crumb, a little something that you understand. It's unethical to take 10,000 people when your orders are to take them up to the junction, and you have no idea what will happen to them afterwards. 2 hours of screaming like a nut. The head psychiatrist of IDF was brought in, the head doctor. I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but not a tear fell from the eyes of the soldiers, not a muscle moved on their faces. They were like robots, like glass walls in front of them. The highest officer only looked at his watch every once in a while and said, Mrs. Tucker, at 12:00, we're going to have to take you out of your house, out of your home. You're going to have to leave here forever. Then, what happened next, I can't understand how it happened, but my daughter, my oldest daughter, grabbed the first soldier inside, grabbed me, and pushed us both into my husband and I's bedroom and yelled at the soldiers. For 29 years, my parents have slept on these beds. Right now, you have to give my mother something from your heart to take out with her. And she ran out of the room, slammed the door shut. I looked the soldier in the eyes, and he burst into tears. He ran out of the room, slammed the door shut. 2 minutes later, my daughter pushed in the next soldier, Same thing happened. 14 soldiers were pushed into the room, one after the other. Media outside the room as witnesses that this happened. And every one of the soldiers burst into tears and ran out of the room. First to leave was my youngest son, who was an officer and left the army a little bit previously to be part of the protest. He decided to put on his IDF dress uniform with his ranks as a sign of protest, and took out a penknife from his pocket and did his morning tearing as a custom in Judaism. When you leave a place of the land of Israel, you tear your cloth in a sign of mourning, and this is what he did on his IDF uniform. At that moment, my husband cried out with great pain, God, I didn't educate my children all these years for this moment to happen. We started leaving the path, walking with soldiers on both sides of us, my children, my grandchildren, and suddenly my husband remembered that he had forgot his talit and his tefillin, his talis and tefillin in the house, his phylacteries and his talit, and he asked, in his prayer shawl, and he asked the soldiers if he can have permission to go back into his own home. He opened the door of the house, and there he sees Mr. 1200, the highest Air Force officer there, leaning on our dining room table, right here on this table, and crying out in great pain and crying loudly bitter tears. And he came back and told me, and I felt that truly God had given me a personal present, that we still have a state of Israel, that it's still the beginning of the redemption of the people of Israel, and then there's a lot of work to do, to connect, to touch, but there's a little flame lit in every one of those soldiers.